Okay, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel simply is discerning what is true. I'm going to be reading chapter 8 from Phil Langdon's book, The Elemental Trumpets. And so hope everybody's doing okay today. Today is the 10th day of November 2024. So I want to make sure that everything's functioning here real quick. So let's get into the reading here of the book, and called the Elementary Trumpets from Phil Langdon, from his book simply called Revelations of the Holy Spirit, Decoded by Phil Langdon. And again, this is chapter 8, Elemental Trumpets. And let's get into this particular work. If you have the book, you're welcome to follow along as I share here, chapter 8. So this again by Phil Langdon. Let me show the sign here, the cards, the tarot cards here. 8. And we'll begin the reading here. A king needs inner and outer strength or fortitude. The 8th tarot card, normally shown as a woman wrestling a lion, suggestive of Hercules and one of the 12 labors of redemption. Strength is the ruler of a nation, such as a king, is a prerequisite and a necessity. The 8th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Chet, C-H-E-T, meaning life, Z-O-E. The Chet is a fusion of 2 letters, the Veil and Zayin. On top of the Veil and Zayin is a bridge that unites the 2. Veil represents the male principle, the husband. Zayin represents the female principle, the wife. The bridge that links them is God. To open the eye of wisdom, we merge God's presence and understanding with all that is physical, as if physical nature is necessary to turn us into God. The opposite of spirit and energy become one and the same in 2 opposite states at the same time. The physical world is in effect a spirit nonlinear, making spirit the archetype and leader of the 2. Both resolve into one, as the physical process becomes the necessity evil, by which we gain understanding of our greater selves by going through the eye of a needle. That's in the scriptures, folks. Eye of a needle. What does that mean? It means simply turning outside, inside out, to experience all 3 aspects of our own spirit when we ascend. Since spirit is the leader in existence, we may also take its nature as the archetype behind cosmic form and action. We can see this in Archangel Gabriel hyperbolic horn, relating the infinite with the finite, in the form of a long trumpet-shaped surface created by rotating the expression, that is 1/n, where n is any number around the axis of the values of n. The surface area of the figure is infinite, as it disappears in the infinitesimal small point at 1 and towards infinity, I should say, while opening like a trumpet at the outer or the other finite end, giving it a definite volume. I mean, this got a wider volume, so to speak, bigger, whose value turns out to be the very neat and tidy /pi. We might compare this character with the cosmos, whose volume will always be finite, and yet whose surface area may be taken to infinity over its infinitesimal small pieces. Of course, it is just the pi. It's just a number with no units, transient to size and scale, a number whose decimals go on forever, applicable to the transient singularity of the heart of a black hole when we compare the nature of numbers with nature itself. In conjunction, the value of pi may be approximately as the fraction 22//7, correct to 3 decimal places, relatable to the 22 chapters of Revelation, and is focused on the number 7. The 7 hermetic principles, you see, 7. With chapter 8, though, we start a new act, you see, Act 2, a new cycle of 7, opening again with a moment of ascension at the 7th seal, as in chapter 1, followed by 4 verses concerning cosmic creation, before continuing with the effect in the cosmic product, the human nervous system. So Revelations, that is split in 3 parts. You have the first 7 chapters. This is part of the Act 1. And all Jewish writers, you can see it in movies today, there are 3 acts in all these plays, all these movies. You get the Act 1 where you all meet the characters of the play or movie, and you begin to get the idea there's an issue going on, and there's either something's happened, either someone's murdered or something else is taking place that's got your attention. And then you go to Act 2, you see, and this is where you get the play out between the aggressor or the, not the aggressor, but the good guy against the bad guy, so to speak. And you such, and we all want to see the good guy win eventually. Well, Act 3, in a lot of ways, simply is dealing with that whole issue. Eventually, the dealing with who's trying to do something bad to someone else and trying to correct it and find out who is the person who did the certain thing, such and such. And eventually, you come up with what we call the last part, the conclusion. And with that, you go back to what we call a sense of peace, because you found out the truth. Someone who had done something wrong is now behind bars, so to speak. You see. So let's read chapter 8, Revelations, that is, starting with verse 1. When we opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. If I understood what Phil's saying here, simply is this is what happened to him when he was at Angkor Wat. This is when the opening of the 7th seal. Now remember that if you listen to anything that Phil shared, he when he was at Angkor Wat in Cambodia almost 10 years ago, he suddenly was in a trance. He saw a statue, and somehow that statue became real to him. And with that, he was put in a trance. If you ever want to ask him, you see. So he's explaining right here, when he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. That's what happened to him. That's when he met God, you see. The 7th seal, and I want to explain something. God is within you. You just don't know it, or you don't know how to get to that. This is what this whole thing that Phil's trying to explain to people. How do you get to this? How do you get to this particular stage in your life to actually meet God? And it's not going to take place in a church. You don't meet God there. There are symbolisms that show certain things about that, yes, but that doesn't take place there. It takes place with the individual. The 7th seal corresponds to Leo, the sun, and is so special and important as the spiritual pineal crown chakra of the conqueror. We find it isolated on its own at the start of a new chapter concerning inner strength and creative power. The experience encountered here is the follow-on from the 6th seal, highlighting the silence of the abyss as the third and final part of the ascension experience that introduces the cloud to the ascended person. Half an hour is 30 minutes, relating to Lamet. L, the appropriate letter of teaching and learning. The light of wisdom is our teacher, now and yet our servant as well, in a sense, like the genie of Aladdin. Every newly born angel becomes a pupil in God's classroom. Their instructor and measuring stick is the light. giving them insight into reality as the level of archetype, depending on their conscious focus. As insights flood into the expanded awareness, the foundation of understanding is sure and grounded in truth as its starting point, like this. Meaning, a illuminate learns everything properly from the ground up. So, this is the same thing would take place in the initiative of the mystery schools. That's how it would start long ago. Verse 2. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. So these are not 7 actual trumpets, okay? You see, this is again a story. The chakras are only prevalent in the body, not the risen spirit by itself, of course. The graph is showing the illuminate bodily chakra at the end of the Creator's right hand is associated, not literal. Quote, the 7 angels before God, end quote, may be identified as the 7 archangels, such as Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Uriah, Cephali, Jehudi, and Barachai, as the 7 lights of the illuminate's rainbow arch of chakras, or even the rainbow, you see. An angel is an angle of light. A and G equals corner or angle. L equals God, relating to the angles of light for each chakra color. The 7 angels are given 7 trumpets, you see, to sound off corresponding noetic, that is the intellectual centers in the brain of the illuminate, as they fire up their corresponding chakras. The 7 archangels then may be seen as the pristine rainbow of chakra lights, that prism white divine light in the illuminate nervous system. The experience of going through the narrow gate at the end of time is always the same for everyone, to the point of being able to write it down at a standard event. However, some of the apparent standard features in Kundalini yoga, like potential noises or effects going off in the brain associated with openings, that is the chakras, are not always noticed, even though they may be written down to contain a complete formal and technical account, as in the Indian Vedas. In this case, the 7 angels of the illuminate are given trumpets in the unison, as if they all have the same trumpet, like Gabriel's horn at the Hermetic archetype, or a hyperbolic expansion from a point, bindu, or singularity, comparable to cosmic creation, subsequently applicable to impersonal subtle physiology. The text then identifies the key points from which this occurs. Another angel, verse 3, who's had a golden censer, come and stood at the altar. So where's the altar at? Where's your temple at? Remember, there are temples all around us, folks. That is, in a physical sense. This is not talking a physical sense here. This is a spiritual sense. He was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. So this is taking place in your head, your temple. Even we talk about this as your temple. The smoke of the incense, together with the prayers of the saints, went up before God from the angel's hand. Quote, the angel came and stood at the altar, end quote, is the Son of God, and his golden censer is the 7th pineal chakra, filling with the light from its radiance and starting the clock of time with cosmic creation, that is hurling or casting, as it says in the KJV, completes the allegory for the effect the light has in generating cosmic creation from the abyssal singularity at this point in the text. And the abyss itself is darkness, you see. Before focusing on the illuminate and casting out all that is impure in the 4 samadhi centers, physiologically expressed through the combined Hermetic idiom of the four elements. The Temple of Solomon, which was sun, the tripart spirit, mimics the human body, like a Christian church, and holds special places in the courtyard for the burning of offerings. If the two pillars of the door are lower into the horizontal position, they would mimic the two arms of the cloud that protrude towards the illuminate to the position of the burning incense that generates a pillar of fire and smoke, a figure of speech for the nature of the cloud. He also demonstrates simply as that with what we call the human body is a temple also. The altar is outside where your feet are. And eventually when you come in is where you're basically where your sexual parts are left. So this is almost to the point where we call it's the part of your different parts of your body. It is a part of the my mind's a slip here. Sorry about that, folks. The 7 chakras, I should say. So certain chakra, eventually where we start at the belly button almost. So verse 5, the angel took the censers, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it on the earth. And there came peals of thunder, ramblings, that is, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Hurling energy into the physical plane is the act of creation that comes directly after ascension to the angel's right hand. The cosmos expands at 4 elements. Peals of thunder, which are air sign. The rumblings are from the water sign. The flashing of lightning is to do with the fire sign. And also the earthquake is to do with the earth sign. All these things are speaking of the chakras, not chakras, but the elements, the 4 elements. That became the effects on the chakra, the 4 somatic centers applied to the luminate. And he has a graph here showing that the earthquake is basically the bottom, which is called the earth. And the second one is to do with the rumblings with the water. Then the flashing of lightning is the fire sign. And the peals of thunder in the air sign. The word earthquake might convince anyone we are hearing about an event on earth. This is what most people read as Revelations. There'll be a great earthquakes and da-da-da-da-da. And when you read that literally, it sounds like the end of the world. That's what it sounds like. And that's what most people today believe, that basically there's going to be an end of the world. No, I'm sorry, folks. It's not going to work that way. Your pastor is not reading scripture in a way it should be read. He never came to God. He never experienced the truth. All he knows is what he was taught at seminary. However, the word earth is material nature, applicable to the lowest center in the human body, as much as to the greater cosmos it comes from, by the Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. Verse 6, then the 7th angel, who had the 7 trumpets, prepared to sound them. So he has an illustration here of the body. And I think we've talked about this in the last chapter, or maybe 2 chapters before, in his book. And you can actually read this stuff through what Phil has provided. Phil has this book. Actually, you can download it for free. I'm surprised no one has done this. After all, it's free. But that's your choice. You choose what you decide, what you want to look into or not. That's your choice. So then the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them, to blow them. So naturally the root chakra, the sacral, the solar plexus, and the heart and the trumpet, your throat, are the first 4 trumpets. So he's basically the 4 trumpets are coming from your belly button. I'm sorry, not your belly button, but the lower part of you. And then the solar plexus is in where your belly button is. The 4th one is your heart. And the 5th one is your throat. So those are the first four here are to do with basically your middle part of your body. This is where it goes from right here where your throat is all the way down below your belly button. The first angel sounded the trumpet, or his trumpet, I should say, and there came hail, Hail, and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down upon the earth. You see how this scares people. A third of the earth was burned up. So people read this literally, they think the third of the earth is burning up, and there's something coming from casting down upon the earth, which is hail, and it's with fire, and it's mixed with blood. And blood making people thinking, oh, this must be someone, they're dying, getting killed, they're such and such blood bleeding. So a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up too. So that gets the idea simply something really bad is happening on the earth. That is in the physical sense. That's not what it's talking about here. You're still in the lower mind because you see these things in a lower perspective. The first angel blows his trumpet at the second chakra, in the lowest creative center associated with the fire sign, Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, hence the fiery association. The three issues of hail, fire, and blood are concerned with the spirema, S-P-I-E-R-E-M-A, the good wine of ascension from the three nadis, N-A-D-I-S. The mention of hail is a watery lunar reference concerning, quote, ether in the brain. Okay, end quote. Combined in a triplet with the fire of the solar force, the pranas, and the blood of the logos, or lamb, which is aura, A-U-R-I-C, fluid, physiologically. These convey the effect in the nervous system from the now bleeding lamb. The trees are the two olive trees, Ada and Pangada nadis, and the grass is the areola, which sees the same fiery Sagittarius force coursing through it. Verse 8. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned into blood. Again, you see how Christians, or you can see how people look at this literally, that they just get scared to death, especially someone, especially in church. Especially young children who have a mind of being innocent. It just scares the hell out of them. Verse 9, a third of the inner creatures in the sea died. So they think, okay, that means whales, dolphins, all kinds of fish die. And a third of those ships were destroyed. In other words, those ships even destroyed. So people look at this literally and say, what's going on here? A third of the world is now in the sea, the creatures are dead, and a third of the ships were destroyed. What's going on? And yet we're hearing the same events at the first trumpet in a 3-to-1 statement, you see, not with the element water at the navel this time. This huge mountain, all ablaze, thrown into the sea, refers to an active volcano, symbolic of Mars and Scorpio, the water sign of danger and death, and the ruling planet of appetites or desires. The third of blood, ocean creatures and ships involved in destruction, all relate to the center as the watery sea, a third of the three centers below the head. So events take place in your middle part of the body here. But yet those who see this literally, they're not going to think that way, you see. They're thinking, God is going to judge. And those who are Christians are saying, right on, just let it happen. Which reveals actually their hearts, which is really, that's not going to happen, but that's what they think is going to happen. I've talked to people here where I live at. I live in the South. The bulk of the Bible Belt. And everybody believes this literal stuff. They believe this stuff. You have others here, but when you look at how many churches that are active here in my county? I mean, there's probably 300 churches in my county. That's county. Most of them are Baptists, a lot of them Methodists, very few are Presbyterian, probably 4 Catholic churches in the whole county. That's in the county. There are probably at least 100 Baptist churches, if not, probably more than that, probably 200. They argue about the color of the carpets, or if they're going to have quote unquote padding on the pews or not. Now, and if that happens, they split, go somewhere else. You see, over trivial things. Kind of reveals a lot about people. Anyway, the third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. So now this is getting very serious if you're thinking of literal, but it's not literal, folks. Thank God. The name of the star, and they talk about this one also, a star is wormwood. And when I remember this, truly remember as a child, it's basically the star is going to come down, wormwood is going to hit the earth. It's going to cause a third of the waters to turn bitter. So people can't, quote unquote, are not going to be able to drink the waters because they're bitter. It says many people died from the waters that had become bitter. When you're a little boy, you see these things and you're thinking, man, this is really bad. And you don't even understand what's being said, you see. And adults don't either. Another great object, a great star that is Venus as Aphrodite of the people in the case, not unlike the previous mountain metaphor, blazing like a torch, is emphasized as fallen, end quote, like Lucifer, since the cardiac center is governed by the emotional psyche nature of the lower mind. Well, phren, P-H-R-E-N. And now cannot use assumption of prejudgment anymore, since the truth with flesh has cast out all untruths, the truth of which is that all of life's pleasure can become pain and bitter. Wormwood means bitterness, you see. The scales of life, Libra, justice are inedible, and the truth is bitter to the lower mind that relies on mediocrity and invented half-truths. It's the realization when someone, comes to the point, this is very good, done well here, and how to see both sides here, and realizing simply is that, God is not judging the world. There's not going to be any end of the world, the earth, ever. But that's what has been planted in people's minds at a very young age, where I live. And it's really sad. Because the reality simply is nothing's ever happened to these people, neither. But there's a sense of terror within them also. And it becomes very vocalized when things are getting bad in this country. But that's the judgment of God. He's going to deal with this stuff. He's going to deal with America, such and such. When reality simply is what's happening in America simply is that we have poor leaders that are basically don't know what they're doing. Well, they actually do know what they're doing. They're actually taking what others they should be taking from. We won't go there. Verse 12 here. The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. So it almost as though the light is no longer stronger in the sun in the daytime or the night, the moon. The fourth trumpet is halfway through the 7, highlighting ascension at the 3.5 mark. Well, this is all to do with a particular perspective, too, when you look at the way certain churches look at this, and contains its thirds as the 6 triangular wings of the Star of David. So they think at this 3.5 mark, halfway, is to do with 3.5 years of the 7 years of tribulation. And Many of these people who believe this simply at the 3.5 mark, if you've done what you're supposed to be and you're a Christian, you'll be raptured up. This is what they're taught in eschatology, last days teaching. This was taught to me long ago. In fact, I used to have a sticker on my car when I was 18 years old, maybe even younger than that. In case of rapture, this car will be unmanned. So you can see how the thinking of an 18-year-old boy believed in this stuff, the literal thinking of eschatology. And that was what was taught quite a bit. Not always, but it was taught in almost all churches. In the 3.5-year period of the 7 years they would study, 7 years, 7. You see, they come with that. That has nothing to do with that. But that's what they're seeing. And so when I was thinking of that 18-year-old, as I'm a quote-unquote born-again Christian, I'm thinking, okay, when the rapture comes, I'm going to be gone. Nonsense. Nonsense for an 18-year-old kid. See. The text here involves the symbols of the solar eclipse metaphor from verse 6 to 14. Sorry, from chapter 6. 6 through 14, where the sun turns black, the moon turns red, and all the stars fall to earth at the moment of ascension to the black abyss. The black abyss is what takes place in your head, you see. In the highest Samadhi center, ruled by Virgo, the ascending virgin, with the moon at her feet and the stars above her head. As the text here involves the symbols of the solar eclipse metaphor. I think I messed up here. The sun turns black and the moon turns red. All the stars. Okay, I'm kind of gotten behind. Highest Samadhi center, you tell about the moon, Virgo, the ascending virgin with the moon at our feet and stars. As I was going to say, this is what I was going to say. As James M. Price says in the Apocalypse, unsealed, quote, all mental action is here suspended on the psyche or subjective plane, as well as on the material or objective. On each plane in turn, the forces have to be brought into equilibrium so that they neutralize each other, and then the consciousness rises to the next highest plane. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good saying. Yeah. When he's showing basically the male and the female here, you see. I'll say it again. All mental action here is suspended on the psyche or subjective plane, as well as on the material or objective. On each plane in turn, the forces, that is male and female, masculine and feminine, have to be brought into equilibrium so that they neutralize each other. So one doesn't dominate the other. They're now at peace with one another. And then the consciousness rises to the next highest plane. So in reality, in some ways, they unite, become one. That's why marriage, in some ways, on the physical sense or aspect or plane, is actually showing the spiritual deal. But most people are not aware of that. You see, the man and the woman. Each has its attributes and each has its detriments. Each is supposed to be helpful for each other. One way or the other, and leads eventually to hopefully unity in the marriage in a physical sense. But also it's supposed to be what he's saying here, and also what Phil would say simply on a spiritual sense. In other words, everything goes black, as he would say. A third of them turn dark, like the abyss of ether in the brain, revealing a cloud. You see, the great projector of light onto the cinema screen of the cosmos, the cinema screen within your head. You see, the first day of creation in Genesis, the first duality of day and night as the first manifest aspect of God in the abyss, the world creation in the Kabbalah. Verse 13, as I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the trumpet blast is about to be sounded by the other three angels. Again, you can see that simply as there's three woes. You see. So the three final woes announced by Aquila, the eagle, the prototype of Scorpio, the death sign, refers to the last three trumpets of the sequence concerning the root chakra at the base of the center nadi, N-A-D-I. From which rises the sperma, S-P-E-I-R-E-M-A, to the pituitary and pineal chakras. Since lower, that is the physical man, is in reverse to celestial, that is the ascension / angelical man. These three final trumpets are woes because they are investigating to the lower natural desires and psychic passions. Here's the start of Act 2. You see, the act with the greatest challenges in any drama. While commenting on the three woes, James M. Price has this to say, quote, "It cannot be too emphatic reiterated that the sex function exists only in the physical and psychic worlds, and the imperial forces related to it are not employed in any way or for any purpose whatsoever by the followers of the Gnosis. The abuse of this function is the most terrible of all crimes, the, quote, blasphemy against the holy humana," end quote, and the, quote, unpardonable sin, end quote, the punishment of which by natural law is the annihilation of the individuality, the second death, end quote. It is only the celibates who preserve the utmost purity of mind and body, thereby regaining the complete innocence of little children, end quote, who can hope to, quote, enter the kingdom of heaven, end quote. Price's view of being barred from entering heaven, that is, becoming angels, unless one remains entirely chaste, is classical puritanical and recks of one who has not entered the kingdom of heaven themselves. And actually, this is to someone who's reading things from Bryce, that is. He's illustrating us as Phil is sharing us. Enter the kingdom of heaven themselves and gain a specific understanding. Because he doesn't have any idea of what he has some idea, but he doesn't have the truth. You see, he hasn't experienced the truth. He hasn't experienced the pineal gland turning on the light that actually shines the darkness of your mind. Suddenly there's no darkness in your brain when that happens. By God in the light. That's the testimony of truth, and therefore cannot fully grasp without the experience of illumination. Entering the kingdom of heaven is on God's initiative, or invitation, I should say, by the grace of God. Okay? And many who would find illumination from it would certainly do so unexpectedly at a point in life which they may have been married for some time, perhaps, and engaged in normal, healthy sexual relations. It is only on a general and immediate approach to spiritual union that we naturally abstain from sexual intercourse and preserve the oil in the cerebrospinal system in order to raise it within a few days, not weeks. Our pursuit of truth eventually naturally inculcates a desire for stillness within the heart chakra on the near approach to the spiritual union. Anyway, also God, our true self, knows us all too well and knows how much we can handle and how acute our intellects become. Coming in a state of self-control and mastery over the physical self, that is the ego, not about shutting anything down and stopping its use unless specifically and temporarily called for. We cannot remove the ego, for instance, but we can recognize it for what it is and allow its existence. What we have, we use consciously, you see. When in control, we use what we have with intelligence and wisdom. So it's not a doing away with the ego. It's actually having the idea of knowing what's happening and having control of it within your own framework, you see. Self-mastery then is about using what is available for personal benefits, or of benefits of yourself, but also of others, within the highest intent at the appropriate time or not. It is never a good idea to pretend an aspect of our reality does not exist, such as sexuality. Like a knife, sexuality is a question of love or abuse. Its nature and limitations should be understood, not ignored. Many a spiritual aspirant have gone off the rails by trying to be the next spiritual hero, without understanding that life is not about sitting it out while inculcating high self-regard. Stillness is found in the heart emotion. Same thing with, I think it's Shakti and Shiva here. The energy and the spiritual. The energy is to represent the feminine part, and the spiritual, the masculine. I find it's kind of shocking today that it seems as though, and I've watched some videos, that men are supposed to be the leaders. They're supposed to be the initiators. They're supposed to be the ones that take the ball and pick it up and run down, deal with certain issues. But I find it simply is that that's not happening. And so what's happening simply is that the feminine, the women are trying to do that. And there's nothing bad about it, except simply is they're not wired for that, you see. That's not their makeup. I'm trying to explain this and make it sound like it seems to simply there's no, I guess what I'm sensing is that women are frustrated with men who are not spiritually involved. Well, that's their problem. You need to just find it yourself. In other words, what I'm trying to say, you need to pursue this. You don't need to quote unquote try to make someone else. If they're not ready for it, they're not going to be ready for it. Okay, and you can't win anybody. That's for them. That's their ball. Let's see. And so it's just this idea of simply trying to peck someone and make them do something. Don't worry about that. That's not the issue here. You need to find out who you are. You see. So the key issue where illumination is concerned is the ability to play with concepts in the potential of the mind. That is the noetics. That's the nerves. You have these 12 noetic signs within you, which are actually the 12 aspects of your of the stars, but not the stars outside of you. The 12 signs. Your whole thing. My mind's just gone blank again. That frustrates me. The 12 archaeological, not archaeological, but the 12 astrological signs. Good grief. It's getting late, but it's not late. It's only 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock here. And the ability to play with concepts. Okay, so what he's saying is you ponder these things. You think about these things. And why is this such way? Why is this that way? Why is God good to me? Why do I have mercy in many times in instance? Why, when I get in trouble, I beg for God for help, and he does help me. I know that, my own self, but it also happens to other people. So that unifying dual opposite spirit and energy using characteristic visual means in a thought experiment becomes easy. The other more spiritual issue is our attitude being in the moment of life or in life, detached from too many emotional investments and outcomes. This comes naturally with greater understanding and leads to life's woes and troubles, turning from great overwhelming oceans of emotional turmoil to storms and little thimbles, you see. We make those, larger than they are. The transformation with ascension sees the individual turning their gaze from the floor around them to the horizontal where they can see for miles. The affable soul or spirit, we become what we focus on in the moment. Like water that can flow, drip, creep, or crash, if we focus on the idea of affable spirit being in stillness, we will discover it as it is like a still lake. This is a simple focus of the great work. We discover through contemplation and reason that spirit is truly the constant reality and yet ineffable. Lighter than the feather, you see, untouchable by the world, since its qualities also extend beyond it. Our very own root, eternally present, immanent, always loved, no matter what. So I want to say something here. The last part here is he says that this is a simple focus on the great work. We discover through contemplation. And contemplation is a form of simply, if this is true, then why is this the other way? It's not true. And so you play with thoughts in your mind. You contemplate these thoughts. How can God, for example, in the Old Testament, Why is God so evil when he chastises and kills? He actually has these so-called people of God who are actually conquering another country, supposedly killing all these people. You know, all these so-called kingdoms that are in there that eventually they will get. Well, first of all, it's not literal, so you don't have to worry about anybody getting killed. Okay, all Scripture is not. No part of Scripture is literal. So when you see that, you fumble with that and play with that and say, well, then wait a minute, hold on a second. This is not literal. This is a story. It's trying to tell me something else. Is it trying to tell me something? I need to conquer my thoughts here in certain areas. Is that what it represents? And some of this you can actually find maybe to do with metaphorically, not metaphorically, but with what I call my book here with metaphysics, not metaphors, metaphysical. And maybe I should just look at one here, for example. I can find one. Like it's called about the Hittites. So who are the Hittites? Well, what does it mean? What is Hittites? It's here. We'll see. Well, it doesn't have Hittites in here. Okay, I was hoping it would be in here. Okay, it's not in here, so I can't make that comparison. But there are other ones that other particular people. I'm trying to think of the other ones. That's the one that stood out to me on my top of my head here. Um, Sorry about that, guys. Um, well, let's look at this one. What about the issue of Goliath? This is from Hebrew, which means simply one sent out, for example, as a champion. This is from 1 Samuel 17:4. Reality of evil, the giant terrifier, the smooth stone of truth hurled by his love, David, destroys illusion. Good is the eternal reality. Evil is falsity. And so there was no quote unquote Goliath. You see, it's a story. It's not about the Hittites, but simply this does point out simply is that Goliath was seen as an enemy of the Israelites. You see, they're showing a story here, and if you believe the literal part and continue to believe that, you won't get to the truth here. And that's what this metaphysical Bible dictionary is about. It explains these things long ago. This book's probably over 100 years old. Not this book, but when it's written. And it simply sings reality of evil, the giant terrifier, you see. The smooth stone of truth, hurled by love. So what he's talking about is two principles here. The truth, also the love. You see, truth can be also harsh, and love can be pansy. You got to know, as even as a parent, what's important to say to your child when they do something. Okay, so you're either going to have to speak truth to them, and sometimes truth can be very harsh. It has to be true, but it also has to be done in love because you love your child. You see, but if you emphasize the whole idea of love all the time, your child will not be able to grasp the truth. You see, and you see you can't have one more. You can't have 85% truth all the time and only 15% love. It's got to be on an even parallel. It's got to be truth and love in an even deal here, so to speak. If you get one extend to the other, something's going to happen. And it's not good for the child. But it's not good for you, even when you're taught to yourself, teaching yourself. It's not good to simply, it's good for you to simply love yourself. But it's also simply, it's good to also understand truth. You see. And truth could be very harsh, be rough. Doesn't mean it's not true. The truth is like simply, as we say, simply with a child sticking their finger on a burner that actually on. and they don't know it. It's reality simply when they touch that stove and it's hot, suddenly they pull it back and it hurts. That's true, you see. And though the parent may say simply is that to try to keep that child from doing that, and response simply is that, no, you don't need to touch this, honey. You don't need to touch this, such. And a lot of times simply is that child wants to test to see if the parent is actually telling truth. Also wants to experience what maybe they think they're missing, and they stick their finger on there. And reality simply is that's the truth. But your parents were in reality trying to tell you not to touch that because simply they loved you enough to quote unquote didn't want you to harm yourself. But a lot of times simply is that in life, most of us don't pay attention to that. And so we choose to do something else. And the reality hits us. And it's a big slap in the face, you see. Kind of gets your attention. And a lot of times that's you have to have that in your life to figure out what's going on with you. You see. You have to be able to judge those things in that regard. You have to understand that what you're emphasizing too much. And I see this a lot of times. That's why in parents' relationships, I look at them and such and see the mother is enormously, quote unquote, loves that child. But the problem simply is that mother also is emphasizing a lot of times, I see this even in neighbors of my next door to me. It's simply they love that child so much or that person so much. The problem simply is you're suffocating that child with love and they can't see it. You're keeping them from seeing the truth. You see, there's got to be a balance. You see, and that's why you have two parents. You have a daddy and you have a mommy. You see, and mom is one who's tender and caring for that child, which is just as important as to do with the father later on. You see. But if there's too much emphasis on one and not on the other, guess what? That child's going to have issues. That child's going to suffer. Probably that child will suffer sometimes, making mistake after mistake, because it simply it doesn't see those things. And what's happened in a lot of ways simply is that people are not strong enough simply if they don't want to talk about the truth. They don't want to deal with reality. The truth is reality, you see. And so that's what we're talking about right here. This is reality. This is truth. This is truth that no one hears anymore. In fact, the world has been in 2,000 years of darkness because it doesn't emphasize the truth. Because no one's had the truth. Or doesn't even understand hardly even that. You see? You understand? And then you have, and then it's also emphasized as simply as that, someone is sharing this stuff, which Phil Langdon is sharing with, takes a tremendous amount not only of truth to understand this stuff and point it out, but also has to understand simply by loving people. I offer this as a gift. I truly want others to know the truth, but I'm not going to charge for it. I'm not going to make money off of people. I'm not going to benefit from this because that's not my goal. That's not my goal here. And that's why he's an angel. Plain and simple. And I'm not an angel. Okay? I'm just someone looking at his writings and looking at it says this makes a lot of sense. And it makes more and more sense the more I read it. And the more and more sense I share with others. And this guy's, he's telling the truth. And yet he loves people because he cares enough about them. He's not in it for the money. Like Eckhart Tolle, like all these people you follow, who you think that when they charge you something for a book, that they care about you. Truth is not in the business of making money, folks. You need to get that in your head. Truth is not about making money. You've got the cart before the animal here. You got things all in the backward positions. You don't see that. You think that you go to pay someone to listen to them, that they're going to offer truth to you. How do you know that? Do you know this person? Do you know them physically? Have you met them? You've been in their home? Have you seen what they're like? I don't know if anyone else has done what Phil Langdon's done. And I'm not getting paid for anything to do this anyway. I'm looking for truth. Okay? I've been involved in different groups since I was 40 years old. I went to seminary so many years, realized, hey, this isn't true. And guess what? I separated myself from the church. I left the church. I didn't want anything to do with the church. So I've been floundering around looking for truth ever since, actually, most of my life, but most of after my mom's death, which was approximately 10 years ago. And I've been seeking ever since then, such and such, trying to find it. And I've been involved in different groups. And nope, not there. That's Zen. That's not that. That's not the complete truth here. Nope. Oh yeah, the third way. Nope, not that. Gertrude. Nope, nope. Ouspensky. Nope, nope. And it's been, one. It's just basically, and that's part of learning. That's just part of the process. You jump from one thing and say, nope, there's something wrong here, and I'm not. Nope, not going to commit to this group anymore. You're not teaching truth. You're not. Same thing with Richard Rose. I was involved in his group, the Zen group. No. Tell me more about what you call Zen. Tell me what did happen to you. And they all is a generalization. There's no specifics of what's going on. Nope, you're not telling the truth. You're not. I don't like that. But that's okay, because that tells me simply I don't get involved in another group like that. You're not telling me the truth. Well, yeah, I spent some money in those groups. Not a lot of money, but I spent money on reading books. I have them in my closet here. I don't read them anymore because they're not telling the truth. There are two aspects of truth here, folks. And most people don't see that. One is stillness. You see, being still. And also, you have to have the ability to simply be able to think. Most people don't get there. I haven't gotten there yet. But I will tell you this much, by what I talk to Phil, he knows the truth. He knows it. He understands it, can explain it 10 different ways, and come up with the same answer. And so, do I follow him? I don't follow him as a God, no. But I do follow him simply as I learn things from what he shares, you see. That's just being smart, you see. So let's get back and discover through contemplation and reason that spirit is truly he's talking about two parts here. You already had one part he talks about, he meets God. So the simple focus of the great work we discover through contemplation. Contemplation is the second step. And reason that spirit is truly the constant reality and yet ineffable. Lighter than a feather and touched by the world, since its qualities also extend beyond it. Our very own root. Eternal present, imminent, always loved, no matter what. You see. And so, with the whole idea with what Phil has shared, something, there are two parts. He met God. Many people meet God. I mean, when I say many people, I don't mean many people, but there are people who are quote unquote met God, and they go ballistic over it, and they think that's all of it. And sadly, they're mistaken, because they didn't contemplate basically why did I meet God? And this is the sad part. There are people who think they've found the truth, but they haven't found the truth. They met God, and that's as far as they've gone. They don't ask the question, simply is, okay, I met God. What does that mean to me? Why did God choose me? Why did it work out for me this way? You see. And when they don't do that, they don't get the second part. The two keys, revealed on the Catholic Church, the silver and the gold key. It's they actually are showing you this is key. The Catholic Church is actually sharing with you and telling you about the two parts, but they don't talk about it. But it's there in the symbology. The two keys, the golden key and the silver key. And the golden key is when you meet God. But unless you activate and move on to the silver key, vice versa, you haven't completed the whole thing. It's the same thing with the masculine and feminine. Same thing. You know, I have attributes of my mom in me. I have attributes with my dad in me. Okay. But if I do certain attributes to say, okay, for example, attributes of my mom and do all those things, but I don't mess anything with my attributes of my dad, I'm incomplete. I'm not whole. You see? It's the same way, you see. You know, your parents are not perfect, but they do have attributes. They have characteristics. They have character in who they are. And so what I'm trying to explain to you simply is we can all gravitate to one particular parent, such and such, and we say we love, but the other one, such and such, has just as important, if they're good parents, they actually say, okay, they reveal other things to you. And so that's what I'm trying to emphasize in the golden and the silver key here, in what Phil has shared with what happens to him. So why did God choose me? I don't know. I don't, you know, but that's contemplating this stuff. You complete, and that completes the work. That's a seal of approval, so to speak. There's a long time ago of advertising, long time. You know, you can be a certain brand or such and such until it has a seal of approval by the chemistry, not the chemistry, but certain boards to say it got a seal of approval. Meaning simply the second part. Oh, I understand why. I understand not only that God loves me simply, but he saw the works that I was doing in the great works and was approval of me, such and such. And again, I see his love in me and how this happens. And then I'm going to demonstrate that to others, you know, by how I live my life through these things. And the only person I've seen to do that is Phil Langdon. There may be other angels on this planet. I'm sure Phil said there are other angels, but there are different types of angels too. That's the other thing people don't understand. So, but anyway, thank you for being here. I'm a little over an hour long, and I don't want to go any longer than that. So this was chapter 8. It was chapter 9. It was here. I almost get them confused, but it's out of his book here, Phil Langdon's work, Revelation of the Holy Spirit, Decoded. Let's turn here. And then we'll go to chapter 9. I think it is. Yes, chapter 9. So that was chapter 8 there. Thank you for listening. Have a good night. May you have ears to hear, eyes to see. Okay, good night.